panic stations! We've got a map, everyone! We've got a map, or more accurately, we've got footage of new map, and yes, it is as transformative to the Unite experience as we could have hoped. Hi, I'm Relic, local excited British boy, and many thanks to Wafu. To be fair, I'm unsure. My English translation says Wafu. The English translation on the video, like Mr. AI voice, says Safu, but then again, they're calling Indeedy Jesus. So quite frankly, I'm more willing to trust my translation, but please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Wafu has been given permission by whoever, the Pokemon Company, Timmy, to release footage into the wild of a private test of the Groudon map. That means that just a few days before we get it for ourselves, we get a little sneak peek, a little taste of what is to come. I say a little taste. It's a smallish video, big flavor. I cannot tell you enough how excited I am for these changes. And if you're excited for this, for our wonderful brand new podcast here, Experience Share, for wild Unite theories that are coming along, maybe some guides as well, feel free to subscribe down below. Be sure to like the video as well and comment. All that engagement really does mean the world. So, we're going to start with the top path. And as Wafu explains, what we have had for the last, well, 3 years pretty much, is 4 Bunnelbees. 1, 1, 2. In competitive play, that usually means that you leave a couple to be taken later on as you prioritize battling over the central Baltoy. In regular ranked, doesn't really matter too much. You know that you're going to be picking up all 4 of these bunnies probably before going through to the Baltoy. And ranked enjoyers rejoice because we've actually lost a Bunnelbee along the way. Now 1, 1, 1. Now you might think that this is less experience initially, and that's because it is, but it's because they've actually made the this central top path contest a lot more interesting. As Wafu explains again, and thank you for putting all these graphics together, Wafu, it makes my job here a lot easier in translating eloquently into English. The AI voice doesn't do a great job. Baltoy, into 4 Bunnelbee. We then have the 5th Bunnelbee, and then, of course, we have the 2 Bunnelbee on the outer edges, it's worth mentioning, before you return to the center of top path to battle for the clouds, Swablu and Altaria. In the Groudon version, 940, so a slightly later spawn point here, we have a central Bunnelbee where the last of the 5 would have originally spawned. We then have 2 further Bunnelbee just south of your goal zone. Nothing changed there, of course. And then 20 seconds later, so a significant time afterwards, praise be, Natu lives. Natu returns to Theia Sky Ruins, and we get 3 of them. From what we've seen in this test footage, it is only 1 Eos energy per Natu, but it does mean that divvying up the experience might be a bit more of a dynamic battle as opposed to that 1 Baltoy, which can significantly shift which team is in the ascendancy. We've all been there. We've all had our central area roamer heading onto the bottom path. We've missed out on the Baltoy. We've missed out on the Bunnelbee. Their central area roamers come onto top path, and chaos and destruction ensue, and nobody has a good time. The Bunnelbees then also spawn above the zone, and so there will be those Bunnelbees to fall back on before the final set of Bunnelbees spawn in their regular location. But before that, check it out. 7th Bunnelbee, where previously Regieleki would have spawned. And so despite losing a Bunnelbee in the run-up to the contestable area of the top path, now there's actually a lot more experience to enjoy. And so how we've seen UCS develop in terms of the meta, where we have one of your ADCs on top path alongside a support with that experience share, now you might be able to legitimately see a level 5 or a level 6 even ADC by the time you've completed Swablu and Altaria, if not before then, if you have that central area Roma coming up and you find some KOs early doors. Fascinating. Top path has immediately become far more important as, well, a congregation point more than anything. And there is more to come in regards to the goal zones. But we will touch upon that a little bit later. Bottom path. We start off with the single Indeedee. Very shortly afterwards, you then have 2 Bunnelby that spawn north of your zone, and 2 Indeedee that spawn south of your zone. And we all know what comes next. We've got this final Indeedee that spawns in the central. That is your major contestable on bottom path. You get 2 Baltoys either side, and then you return for the Altaria and the Swablu. Way less experience here on this bottom path. And by the way, Wafu didn't go ahead and mention any changes to the bottom path laning process. I believe it is still 1-1-2 Bunnelby. So it is exactly the same as what we have with Rayquaza, just the top path which has changed. And you'll understand why in a little bit. As I say, there's actually less experience overall. Now, starting with 2 Bunnelby in the center, which honestly is quite interesting. It does mean that how you tackle that bottom path farm is going to have a much larger impact on what more you can gain from bottom path contestable, because you will still now need, if you want to do things properly, and admittedly the ranked experience may not allow for this, but if you want to do it properly, you're probably going to leave all of those Bunnelby on path so that you can focus on the 2 Bunnelby center. The opportunity to steal away from your opponents is pretty big. We then have 2 Indeedee spawn, now north, not south of the zones, but we're doubling up. That is more EXP to be enjoyed just later on in the process as another 2 Indeedee spawn at 9 minutes 30. 15 seconds later, a Bunnelby spawns, and so puts more emphasis on getting into that path and that contestable zone way earlier, and then trying to roll on with the dominoes. There are 2 clear flashpoints here with those Bunnelbys in the center, making up the primary war zone for you in Unite on the bottom path. Alright, central area. It's going to be very different than how you've seen it before. Altaria Swablu, sometime into the game, it's no more. There is no time to waste in, as a central area player, going back into your side of the map to go and look for wild Pokemon or to try and pick up your second set of buffs. At 9 minutes, the Natus are back. And this is what you're going to be seeing here initially. It's little pockets of EXP. I don't think it is going to be as important for the top path to contest this because of how much is going on up there and how you will want to channel as much EXP into your ADC as possible, although it could be a good rotate option if you are maybe on the losing side. Hey, if you're having a great top path experience, maybe it just continues to domino there. I think this will be more important for the bottom path coming up to try and gather a little more EXP. Especially since you'll have, in theory, that defender on bottom path to hold down the fort whilst your supporting ADC or all-rounder maybe goes up and looks to contest. But importantly, with no bushes to work with, you gotta hope that you know what you're doing, or that maybe you'll have some sort of a team rapport where a number of you go into contest these, because there's going to be no escaping and there's going to be no traps either. That much is for certain. But what was coming next? That was the big question, wasn't it? What comes next after this? And we got our answer in Regidrago. Now, it was the English press release was kind of non-committal, middle of the game, they said. It's actually a lot earlier than you would imagine. Regidrago spawns at 8 minutes. As you can see with this mini-map, it does roam. Once it is in the map, it starts to roam south and then roam north, so on, so on, so on. So it's quite similar to how the 500-point mode Regidrago works in that regard. But what's more interesting is the nuance of not just how you take this thing down and how many resources you're going to commit to this, but what sort of rewards you get out of it. Because we read again in this English press release, you're going to get a goal scoring buff. And so we're thinking, okay, I guess it's kind of like Goal Getter, and it is kind of like Goal Getter. Except it's for one single person. As we see here in this footage, we have Pormok, Clefable going into the center, going after the Regidrago, Piloswine joins. It's a very good time. Notice how long it's taking to whittle this down, though, early game. It's a meaty objective. But then check this out. Check this out. Pormok, the last, or Pormo, still gonna have to learn the names. They are the only ones to walk out with the buff. They're the ones who have the last hit on the Regidrago. Now, admittedly, in this build of the game, everyone surrounding the Regidrago gets a big experience boost. Dreadnought is well and truly back. If this test server experience translates to the public build. Wafu is quite clear in saying he reckons it might be a bug. The experience that you gain from Regidrago is huge, but again, to balance that out, only one person walks out with the actual goal scoring bug. We can see there, big experience balloon. And so Regidrago is an objective. Very interesting. Next question, how often does Regidrago appear? The honest answer is it could only appear once. From what Wafu is telling us, much like Altaria and Swablu, the respawn timer is roughly 90 seconds or so. There is another chance for Regidrago to appear in that central area, but in Wafu's experience, it is more often than not the Natu that are going to respawn. He wagers over 90% chance of Natu after that Regidrago, which is guaranteed 8 minutes, 2 minutes into the game if you want to go the other way. So a late game Regidrago, or just a second Regidrago in general, might be a huge opportunity for a team to try and gain back levels or further pile on the pressure by finding yet another big experience share. And of course, those Regidragos later on in the game should be easier to take down due to your natural level scaling advantage. That's fascinating. I'm a big fan of that. And to be fair, this whole RNG element and having to read the game on the fly is a big theme of Theia Sky Ruins Groudon, as we will delve into with the Reggie situation. Now, I think this was pretty well covered in the English press release, where previously, Regieleki top path, your Roulette Reggie on bottom path, Bob's your uncle. Things have changed. Regieleki is still guaranteed. Whether it's on top or bottom path, who knows? And you won't know until it is spawned in. You will know that there is a timer counting down, but how your team rotates and adapts to the situation that is placed in front of them will be critical at this point on the map. 7 minutes to go, 3 minutes in. On the opposite side, you will have your 3 Regis, kinda. With Rayquaza's version of Theia Sky Ruins, it was a coin flip every time. It could be Reg Ice first, then Reggie Rock, then it could go back to Reg Ice. Now, whatever Reggie you see that first time around, that is what is always going to spawn. So, Regieleki, once it chooses a path, it's going to stay there. You know that Regieleki is going to be there the next time around once it respawns. And it's exactly the same case for our Roulette Regis. The Roulette happens at the beginning, and then let's say that it lands on Registeel. Registeel will be that permanent buff, that permanent boss to take down throughout the map. I don't know how to feel about that. I quite like the fact that you could turn up with something different. Then again, I think that there are so many RNG elements now added to Unite and to this ranked experience and to this competitive experience, then maybe removing one of the RNG elements will just make things a little easier to understand, because you shouldn't be punished for basically saying, oh, well, what if we get Registeel this time? Or what if we get Regirock this time? That adaptation has already happened earlier in the game, and there is more adaptation to come later on, because returning to that central area, we have Groudon. And a lot has been said about Groudon and the buffs that they entail. Unite up until this point, but for a brief period when Rayquaza was first introduced, when it was much more difficult to take down, and when the buff was significantly less powerful. Unite has always been a game that is usually 95+% won in the final 2 minutes. One errant take of the Rayquaza, one final hit onto the Zapdos, and your team really should be winning, barring an excellent recovery effort from the opposition team. Or if you've spent so many resources, if you've lost so many of your teammates in trying to take that central area objective, that all of a sudden you don't actually have the manpower to get scores across the line to then go on and win. This Groudon buff is interesting. We're going to see this team taking it. So this is Wafu's team. Right. What do you notice here? Immediately, shields are still a thing. Shields are still a thing, but it's not the Ray shield. It's not part of the buff. The buff is that little red circle that you can see below each Pokemon. It gives you an attack buff. It gives you a goal scoring buff, just like Ray. However, goal scoring is interruptible because this is a regular shield. It's a good shield. And you get health back from taking Groudon, of course, but it is an interruptible shield. You are still going to feel very powerful with the Groudon buff, but you're not going to be invincible. And not only that, the Groudon buff, if you are to get KO'd, transfers over to the other team, and all of a sudden, that Pokemon is really powerful. So a lot is going to be said of how teams bounce back from Groudon, how you manage defending your zones. How far truly are you behind in terms of level? What is your composition like? All of these questions will be brought firmly into focus rather than, well, I guess they've got 4 people scoring hundo burgers. I guess we've lost now. It's incredible. I'm so happy with this. And I really should re-emphasize here. The Groudon buff is very, very powerful. We'll see here with some footage here. This Trevenant, for example, is still getting taken down quite significantly. Look at that Crustle coming in with the X-Scissor. It's no joke. But because the shield is not what Rayquaza had, because it's just a regular shield, it means that their scoring attempt has been delayed. Here we see on the defense this time, we see a Snorlax going in. We see Pawmot, one of our new licenses, going in, taking down this Cram, stealing the buff away, and is now able to go toe-to-toe with this Crustle, who's a little bit worried, goes into the X-Scissors, got Ho-Oh for cover, but you can see just how dynamic the push and the pull of this battle on this T2 zone is, because stealing away that one buff does make a difference. Not managing how you go from launch pad to defend your T2 zone potentially, how that can have an impact on things and how quickly you can get run over if you don't tackle your responsibilities properly. So much more nuance. It really is going to separate casual players who don't know what they're doing from the very top players. And I think even with those very top players, we are going to see some serious progression in how macro is handled and how important micro will be when it comes to stealing away those Groudon buffs if you are the team behind. Let's talk tall grass, shall we? There's less of it. It's a simple way I'm going to put it. Let's just roll through the footage. So we're missing these 2 bushes on top path. Now, this is generally speaking excellent for your central area roamers. It's excellent if you are looking to defend your T1 zone, since it is the closest to the T1 zone. No longer. If you are a central area roamer, you've either got to show yourself, scurry up to that to that bush north of the T1 zone, or you're contesting for the central bush. I know there's some folks out there who won't like this, who quite like the nuance and the ability to lie in wait, but this is encouraging smarter play, and it's encouraging a change in when you rotate as a central area roamer, rather than getting up there, lying in wait, and then, whoops, they don't know you're there. You're able to take them out, so on, so on. It's far less binary, a rotation option, I think, here on top path than before. There's no tall grass on the T2 zone. Now, this is really interesting because it is on the bottom path. So it's not a complete mirror from top to bottom. So this leans into, I guess now's a good time to tackle it. This leans into the goal scoring and how the score values themselves have changed. Yes, there's more experience to be earned on the top path. Your goal zones are also a little more fragile. I've got the numbers here. Let's go through them. It was previously 80, 80, T1, T2, top path, bottom path, exactly the same. Now, on top path, your T1 is worth 70. Your T2 is worth 90. And on bottom path, the T1 is the only one that hasn't changed. It's still 80 down there, but your T2 on bottom path is 120 points. A full hundo burger does not take down that T2 zone. And bringing it full circle on this discussion, you've still got bushes there. So it is the most defendable point. It is a proper stronghold from which maybe you can counterattack, from which maybe you can do something spectacular. Speaking of the bottom path, there are some changes here, but it's more to do with the central area than the bottom path outright. You'll see here we're missing our two tall grass placements closest to what was previously the Ray pit, which is now the Don's pit, I guess. You're out in the open. Position will mean so much more. You'll notice that at the top of the central area, that tall grass hasn't changed, but on the bottom, it is now an L shape. It's slightly different. It's slightly less. And it means that those supportive options in team fights, whether we're talking outright supporters, defenders, CC, AoE attacks, composition becomes so much more critically important than at any time before. How far back are you willing to position if you want to prioritize tall grass? Questions for later. I don't know, man. This is ultra. Oh, and by the way, super jump pads on bottom path, they've also lost their tall grass. You can see the tall grass on the top path is still there by the Diglett pads, but basically it's trying to stop people from sneaking in bottom path, which, now that I think about it more, it definitely tries to answer the problem of, oh, my team's taking down Ray, and now, oh no, somebody's coming from left field and nobody knew that they were there, and now they've stolen the Ray and everybody's disappointed. I think there's going to be way less of that because it's going to be far more readable to see someone not just jumping into that central area, but there's going to be less time where they are not visible in the tall grass. If that's going to make a difference, I don't know. But it's a subtle change, and I can see what the vision is. And so that's it. Really, that's it in terms of map changes. Wafu goes on to talk about what he foresees as how the meta is going to shift, and I think I would recommend you go and listen to that video or the AI translation of that video. But I think overall, the base point still stands. Top path is ultra critical to early game. ADCs come online much earlier, in theory. You can fall behind quicker, but there are now more opportunities mid-game through the likes of Regidrago, where you can rebound. There's an element of the unknown. No, not the Pokemon, just the vibe. As you don't know whether Regieleki is top path or bottom path. You don't know what Regi buff you are going to be dealing with on the opposite path. And then there's Groudon, endgame. Yes, you lose, but do you really? Let me know how excited you guys are for this in the comments below, because I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And this has been a long video, longer than I thought at least anyway. So subscribe for more, like if you like, comment, let's have a discussion, and I'll see you in the next one.